Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of E&Ftv. Today, we're joined by the brilliant Julie Grieve, who is the founder and CEO of Criton. Julie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Brilliant to be here, Tom.
It's great to have you on the show. And obviously, with regards to our discussion just a moment ago, we've had a bit of a laugh already, and I'm hoping that will continue in this. But I suppose, first off, for our audience, just to understand, obviously, a bit about you, a bit about your background, and of course, I suppose what brought you to start Criton, of course. It'd be great to understand a bit about you. So please do, tell us about yourself.
Sure. So, I suppose I'm a bit of a hospitality newbie, really, as in 2013. I spent most of my career working my way up in the serviced office business. And I eventually became the MD of a UK and Europe-wide business called Abbey Business Centres and worked very hard to make that a success. Eventually became a shareholder, and we sold it in 2011 to a well-known company called Regis. So I had some time off after that, and then I was approached by a property developer in Edinburgh called Chris Stewart, and he said he had this building he was developing. He already had some service apartments, weren't performing very well. He had this idea that he might want to make it into service apartments, but he didn't want to commit to a franchise or to a management company. So he said to me, when we were standing in this building, it was still like open windows connected together, the old town in Edinburgh. And he said, do you think you could operate it for me until we know what we're going to do? And I was like, sure. Used to be quite good at putting bums on seats. How hard can heads on beds be? That was my exact words.
Right.
And, my mum and dad had a small sort of hotel-y, restaurant-y rooms thing when I was growing up. In the days when people used to write to you with checks to book rooms or phone you. And yeah, that was 2013. And literally, I had the biggest learning curve in the world. So that went from, to opening 50 apartments on the Royal Mile of Edinburgh, 200 heads on beds when we're full. I had to learn about all the technology, which, as you know, is a disaster. And nothing talked to anything then in 2013. You need a channel manager, you need a booking engineer, you need a PMS, all these acronyms. I remember wandering around TTE just thinking, what have I done? But I was totally hooked because serviced offices, you have long-term clients, they live with you effectively. And so it is quite, it's very hospitality-led, but they go home at night and they go home at the weekends. And your services make or break from their business. But hospitality is make or break for someone's experiences, their weddings, their celebrations, their anniversaries, their birthdays, even just a weekend away as a family, a couple, whatever it is. And I just loved the immediacy of the feedback, that the difference you could make. And, built the team, got the brand in place, Lateral City as it was, worked with Chris on lots of appraisals to do more. So, Chris Stewart Group's very aspirational property developer. I had this idea around about digitising guest information because I had spent a fortune doing the in-room directories, branded folder, bits of paper, immediately out of date, coffee in it. One time there was a sock in it when I was doing a tour with some booking agents, and if you're a Harry Potter fan, then, I was like, oh, I'm a free elf. That's what happens if you're a Harry Potter fan. But, that was just like, so, I called it my secret shame. Immediately it goes in the rooms, it's out of date and it's probably covered in something. So I just started to think about what could I do to improve that. And I got a quote for an app and it was too expensive. And I Googled WordPress for apps and it didn't exist. And so there was this little worm in my ear going, I think there might be something there. And eventually convinced my husband, bless him, that we should sell our house in Edinburgh so I could start a technology business because, I'd never done that before. So let's start a technology business.
What's next?
Yeah, exactly. And Criton was born, and Criton's there to help hotels put all of their guest-facing technology in one place to really drive guest engagement. And through that guest engagement, you drive your return on investment. Because hoteliers will tell you all the time, oh, I've tried guest messaging, I've tried apps, I've tried this. You don't get the engagement. Of course you don't, because it's too many interactions. Make it easy for your guests to engage. And then before you know it, they're happy and they're spending more money.
I was going to say, because your focus is, of course, on the tech side. So I suppose, how do you see guest tech playing out going forward? What do you see for the future? And obviously with regards to what's going on at the moment, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, last year, busiest year of Criton's short life. We're 4 years old, and it just absolutely kicked off as hoteliers went from I'm not sure if I want to do a contactless guest journey to I need to have a contactless guest journey. So that was quite interesting, and certainly contactless made it to the boards of companies. Digital guest journeys, contactless, digital keys obviously talked about a lot more than it has been. For me, I think it's inevitable that technology will play a more front and center part of the guest journey, because we all have phones. And we all live our lives through them. And I think hospitality will go through the same journey as the airlines did. So, if you think about it, 15 years ago, you had to get to the airport, you had to queue, you had to get printed a boarding pass, you had to take your bag. And slowly but surely they've educated us that queuing's rubbish and we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And now, if I've got about 20 airline apps on my phone, and if you said to me, go to book with an airline and you have to go in queue, I would think it was terrible. and so I think we will go through the same journey in hospitality, whereas the choice of how you check into a hotel will be entirely yours. Whether you need help from one of the hotel team or whether you want to go directly to your room will be in your hands. Yes. And it will become a hygiene factor. So then you've got to look at, if that's unexpected, how do I make it a better experience? And I think that's the exciting thing for me, is how do we help hoteliers firstly embrace it, go down that digital transformation and not lose themselves. Yeah. And then how do we make it amazing for the guest?
I suppose it's one of these things where, as you say, for such a long time, that element, I remember going into I won't know the brand, but I went into a certain branded hotel for the night, and I walked in. It was the first time I'd ever experienced something like this, and this was before the pandemic. But I walked in, but there was nobody at the front desk. There was this sort of self-service sort of, you got the keys, you sort of swipe it and that sort of thing, right? And I was sort of like, okay. There was one thing that sort of stayed with me, though. There was no signposting about that. There was no, this is what's going to happen. And just being a consumer, I was sort of looking around first, and I thought, am I supposed to do this? Or and it sort of said, scan here or put your name in. So I suppose hotels, they've always been known, and you may disagree or agree with me on this, in the nicest way possible, because a lot of my people are hotels. But I said they are notorious for being quite sluggish with change. And I've been quite outspoken about what's been happening more recently in the current crisis and the disruption that it's brought. Because with any disruption, arguably, there is of course been a lot of negative impact. That's not arguable. But the argument bit is, with any disruption comes positive change. Yeah. Or change, whether that's taken positively or not. And I do think, I massively agree with you. You said the word necessity, and I believe that wholeheartedly. Yeah. And I think that hotels have gone from thinking, oh, maybe we'll look at that contactless element. Whereas, as you say, now it's like, if we don't, we're missing a trick. We should be, from a pure safety point of view, if we've got an option, why aren't we investing in it? Yeah. I suppose the question's got to that, hasn't it?
Well, I think the industry is driven by chains, and then the independents stand to the side. And the independents, it's not that the chains don't care about service, but they're about scale and standard operating procedures. And so inevitably that has an impact on individuality. The independents are there because they want to provide service. And no matter where you are, still we grow up with this idea of service means people, the more people, the better. Yeah. But actually, as people now, we might not want that. I travel. I mean, I used to travel every week. You know, I am a hotel guest every single week when I'm able to be. And so I see it all. And, you know, before I had my own business, I was quite successful and I stayed in some very nice hotels. Some of the experience that hoteliers think is perfect wasn't. As an individual female traveller, I don't want someone to take me to my room. I don't want them to say my name and, you know, where I've come from and all that sort of stuff. I just want to go directly to my room and get on with my stay. So I think that choice is going to be the most important thing. And I think it will be driven by the fact that chains are going to offer that choice because it becomes part of their standard operating procedure. So how do you, as an independent hotel who's trying to be authentic in your guest experience, really embrace technology to continue to give the guest the choice and be authentic? And, you know, there's no doubt that a lot of hoteliers are still very, very concerned about a guest looking at a screen. But I had this exact conversation with a well-known hotelier who's like, you know, hugely concerned with service, very successful. I want my guests to put their phone down when they're in my hotel. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So, but your Instagram channel is pretty mental, full of hotels, lots of photos, you know. So it's not up to us to tell our guests how to relax. It's up to us to enable our guests to have the best day that they want. So if they want to look at their phone the whole time while they enjoy your sheets, then that's up to them.
Yeah. It's one of these things as well where tech in its very basic form is to allow for things to be made easier, is to allow to streamline things, right?
Yeah.
And I sometimes find that there's this preconception that if we get a load of tech in, or if we get screens in, all this sort of stuff, we're going to lose. I think you were alluding to this as well. We're going to lose our character. We're going to lose our personalization.
Yeah.
And I think that we do need to step away from this, misconception, because it's not there to take away from your personality. If anything, it's there to elevate and allow for it to be easier, so that guests can then enjoy your environment a lot more. That's the whole point. Right?
Well, I mean, you know, so, you know, I was I was operating for 3 years, 4 years, and you recruit a team who all care about the guests, who want to provide service, who see service as something that's amazing to deliver and be part of. And then you throw a bunch of crappy admin tools into their hands and expect them to, you know, figure out how to use these really not very intuitive tools to keep track. And this is it. We've thrown process tools into that guest journey. I mean, most of it's about making sure that we've got payment details for the guest, and a little bit's around about making sure that we've got guest details so we can remarket to them. And that's wrong. Technology should allow you to do this, to do more with the same amount of staff, or the same amount with less staff. But that doesn't mean you're going to lose staff. It means you redeploy them into the hospitality arena, where the best experience when someone walks through the door and you're like, oh, hi, you've got your app, do you know where you're going? Or in the bar where you get that amazing banter, or in the corridor, whatever it is, that your team are freed up to provide hospitality.
Yeah, I think it's strange, but it's almost been lost in a lot of ways. I think there has been a bit of a resurgence of bringing the human element back to hospitality, because I think a lot of people would argue that it's been somewhat dulled, and I think that there is an opportunity now to go, let's get our personality back. This is who we are. This is what we're all about. And all of our team are massively lovely, but also incredibly sarcastic at times, and they've all got their own personalities. You know what I mean? That's what you want. You want the banter at the bar, or as you say, in the corridors, or whatever it is. But
just people. I mean, let's face it, for the next few years, we are going to want people. We don't want someone head down, you know, are you checking in? Of course I'm checking in. I'm stood at your reception desk with a bag. But we train our staff, you know, so that's the receptionist's way of getting the PMS ready to enter information into it. I mean, it's a hugely frustrating thing. And that reimagining your guest journey, and I mean this from, this is at pre-arrival and arrival. You think that If you think that guests are desperate to come and stand in a queue to check in and speak to your receptionist, you're sorely mistaken. They're coming to your hotel, and that barrier, if you can erase it, amazing experience. So, but we built all these processes because none of the technology at the back end of our systems talks to each other.
I suppose, what about the tech element again? So obviously, looking at this, but progressing it slightly in terms of these high touch point, ultra luxury environments, all this sort of stuff. I mean, where are we now? And obviously, where do you see that developing?
Well, I think, again, it's about guest choice and enablement. So, from a guest perspective, let's go back to the airline example.
Sure.
So if you're flying first class, are you not using your app to get your boarding pass? Are you not using your app to go directly to the front of the queue? I think you are. Yeah. And nobody thinks that that's a bad experience. So again, as hoteliers, we do need to change our view on this. But I think there's a huge amount of concierge element and personalised service that can be delivered to someone's phone pre-stay and during stay. So, if you know that your VIPs are looking for something different, the technology should enable you to deliver that. Yeah. So, for example, if you've been to Mauritius a couple of times, and in Mauritius, if I have to phone to get the butler to come to my room to do something, then it's maybe a bit awkward, what am I going to do, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if I can just, from my poolside, say, can you draw me a bath? I mean, I did this once. I don't do this every week, just to be clear. But, it would be great, because they're always saying, do you want a bath with petals in it while they're doing your towels and all that sort of thing. The concierge element of that, where I can choose when I want it and communicate with the person who's going to service that, is phenomenal experience, rather than having to tiptoe about or, just not be 100% sure who's knocking at the door and when and all that sort of thing. I think there's a huge amount to be done with it in the luxury arena.
Yes.
And it's about accepting that it's all down to the guest choice and how they interact with you.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I didn't think about that actually, but there's a lot of scope, and arguably more scope in the luxury market, because they can play with it a little bit more. Different aspects of it, obviously with regards to their guest element. I mean, we spoke about this just a moment ago before the episode, but the opportunity there and the education piece for their staff, as we said, if we're implementing this sort of practice from the absolute start, from the get-go, from the moment they book, and we're learning about the guest, we're learning about who they are they traveling with a family, what do they like, what don't they like, all this sort of stuff. Not only are we able to deal with the guest there and then, from the moment they booked and obviously when they stay, but as you mentioned before, after they're gone, retaining that business and bringing it back. And in a lot of ways, not only servicing that guest, but servicing the business from an OTA standpoint, we're able to step away from that because of the return business element. We'd hope that a guest would then come direct, right? I mean, that's got to be part and package of it.
Yeah. So again, I'm using airlines a lot, but let's just take the British Airways app. That's probably the audience we're talking to. British Airways doesn't really need you to be in the British Airways app to get your boarding pass. You can do it online. Your pass can be emailed to you. You can have it on your phone. But through the app, it's a great guest user experience, and then you've got the app, and they can sell stuff to you. So so my phone over the past 2 weeks, I've had probably 3 messages from British Airways, a couple from EasyJet. I've had a Ryanair message. I've had Virgin, Delta have made. I mean, I do have a lot of airline.
I was going to say, how many apps do you have?
I've counted, and I have 13. But that's the selling directly to my phone, and there's this Google micro moment. I wonder if I can, and why we spend so much money on these easy to use platforms like Amazon is you go, I wonder if I can buy a sock for my whatever, and you go, oh, I can, and then you buy it because it's not expensive and it's just there. You don't have to do a lot of research, and so boom, you're gone. And the same opportunity is there with guests to know what it is they're looking at and then to serve them an offer. Huge opportunity. And that's great experience, right? Because if I'm interested in a gin match dinner during my stay, and all of a sudden the hotel says, hey, Julie, there's a gin match dinner when you're staying with us, I'm going to go, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Done. Before I go off to some gin bar down the road that doesn't benefit the hotel at all.
Yeah, this is it. And I do think, because we had an airline consultant actually on, and we had an upselling sort of specialist on as well. And I do think that the airline, again, they've always been that, I was going to say one step, I'd say a few steps ahead of the hospitality industry. But that upselling piece, that experience, I've experienced it myself with Qatar Airways. Yeah. And the sort of, it was a very minor thing, but obviously the bidding for upgrades.
Yeah.
And I immediately feel, I was, watching something on the TV or something, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, could I get this? Could I do it? Could I, and you're immediately back in the mindset of my experience and what I'm going to be able to get, and if I'm going to be able to achieve this.
The anticipation.
And then on that, you'll look at the different ancillaries, the different stuff that they've got. You've got the meals, you've got this, you want to upgrade this, you want to upgrade that, blah, blah, blah. Hotels, my main experience of working with hotels anyway, has always been you book your room and you might get an email or a call saying, do you want to add something to your package? And it will usually be quite minimal.
Yeah.
But it's just that elevation, I think, that we're just missing in our industry. And it'll come, I imagine, with all these fantastic tech options. But yeah, that's what I see anyway.
It will. I mean, the booking window's coming in, which is an interesting piece, right? So previously you would book your room and then you'd think, oh, I've booked that for my anniversary in 4 months' time. As you get closer to it, you start to think about what you want to do. And that would be the perfect time to get to someone. So someone opens an app 2 weeks before they're arriving, they're probably looking at what they're going to do and booking their itinerary. Great opportunity for the hotel to sell. But I think this whole domestic travel piece for the next few years is a massive opportunity for the industry. And I said this to you earlier, domestic can come back again and again and again. It's the one thing we know about international travelers. They won't come back again, but they'll tell their friends if they have a good experience. Domestic can repeat. If right now, if they feel safe and they trust you and they're a couple of hours away from you, you can market to them at any point and say, this is what we're doing. But you're also creating the future generation of guests, because if as a kid and growing up, you've been somewhere with your parents several times, you want that experience for your family. And so the opportunities are endless here and so exciting.
Again, I'd say as well, is a lot of hotels maybe have some more time to be able to focus more on a bespoke almost, holiday. If they know that they've got people that will come, as you say, why can't we create a new dining experience? Why can't we do something in our communal area? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? Yeah. We saw creativity coming from the M&E piece last year, with immediately people saying, let's get creative with our communal spaces. I heard of one property, or a number of properties anyway, using car parking spaces with gazebos.
Yeah.
People can get creative. There's an option and there's an opportunity there. Amazing. So it could be seen as a very exciting time or a very difficult time, and obviously part and parcel, I suppose.
Look, as a hotelier, you're always busy, right? There's just no downtime, and even last August, city centre hotels didn't see the benefit of this. But if you were, a resort, beach, or forest, then you were slammed, because obviously COVID didn't go there, and so they went from quiet and thinking to really busy, and now they're a bit quieter again. And so it is that time to actually think about, what do I want my guest experience to be, and how can I leverage that for the hotels so that actually it makes a difference to my bottom line? And don't get me wrong, any change is a pain. Of course it is. You've got to change your mindset, figure out how it's going to work, but it can be hugely positive to the bottom line. And it's just about taking the step. And then, of course, it's vendors' role to make it as easy as possible, to ensure that this technology embeds in your processes, that your team use it, that you can prove the ROI, and that your guests are getting a really good experience. And that, from a vendor's perspective, is the most exciting part. When you see somebody go from, so we've got a customer not far from me actually, who had always had our app, pretty much since when we started, and I had done, decent downloads, but they added F&B into it so the guests could order and pay, and they made all of guests, diners or not, or staying, download the app and book. 10,000 orders through the app in the first quarter, from July through till September. a hugely successful launch of a takeaway business because they had all these local people with the app on their phones.
Yeah.
He's extending his kitchen now because he wants to take away when they reopen.
That is awesome. I love that.
That is brilliant.
That is one of those stories that I think people need to hear, is getting creative with your space, but getting creative with how your business works, I think is the difference between you and your competitors and where you go. I'm a massive fan of that. That's awesome. I suppose coming on to you guys now, I guess a bit more specifically, how, what have you guys been up to? How have things been? And obviously, what have you guys got coming up, I suppose?
I mean, last year, really, honestly, completely mental. I never thought that I would ever curse the governments for all saying they would open at the same time. And it kind of became blindingly obvious it was going to happen. So we had signed up. I mean, we tripled the number of locations we were working with and doubled our customers through that sort of April, May time, when hotels were thinking about what they wanted to do, the contactless piece of it, all that sort of thing. As you'll recall, at one point, books were coming out of rooms, tea sets were coming out of rooms. We need our guests to be able to say what it is they want, no more breakfast cards, all that sort of stuff. So we were really busy, and everyone was gathering their thoughts. And then all of a sudden, beginning of July, we were like, oh my God. And it was like, and my team, God bless them, they worked their absolute socks off. And so many people were furloughed, and my team were like all smashed at the park. So it was a great year for us in terms of adding customers, but we did do a lot of support for our customers, which of course is what you would expect to any supplier to the industry. But what's coming up really from the next stage of our journey is this moving towards, we collect so much data. How can we turn that into insights? So this is what I always say. Everyone talks about big data. When you hear the chains, I've got a data lake. Who wants a data lake? I want insights. I want someone to say to me, your data says change this to get this. So, when I'm talking to the development team, I'm always talking about what insights can we give our operators to get us to the point where we can say, do this, or even actually we've done this because we know this is the best thing for you. And that seeing where we're getting to with that, and just looking across the piece against where people are, so if you've got digital key in your app, what does that mean? If you've got check-in and payment but not digital key, all the different pieces of our journey, because we're a very scalable product. You can start with a simple digital guest book with the ability to market to your guests and then take it from there. It's super exciting, and it feels like a big step forward, because guest downloads are now completely off the scale. I mean, they were always good when operators followed our guidance, and we were definitely where we had a lot of operators who were getting 1 and 2 arrivals with download. Now, I mean, some of our operators, it's 100%.
Wow.
100% download, and then they keep it, and then you've got this closed marketing group. It's happy days, Yeah. So that's what's exciting for me, is how do we leverage that for everybody and really get guest feedback and customer feedback to make it even better.
That's awesome. And again, I suppose congratulations in order for having the best year last year. I know obviously it was a difficult one for a lot of us, but some of us did see some great success, and I think wherever we do see it, it needs to be celebrated. So congratulations to you and obviously everybody at Criton for such an amazing job.
Thank you, Tom. Don't get me wrong, I didn't make any money out of it, but it was great in terms of user numbers.
And of course, I imagine it's had a direct impact on branding as well. Obviously, you guys being in front of everybody and getting the reputation out there. And obviously, that's something that we've been massively focused on. So, no, again, it's a bit of a positive spin in such a, I suppose, doom and gloom time. But I know obviously how busy you are right now. So I just want to say a massive, massive thank you for obviously taking the time out of your diary to join us. It's been a real pleasure. I know that our audience is going to find a lot of value in obviously what we discussed today. But obviously anybody that does want to find out more, I'll link your website below, and I'm sure obviously I'll be tagging you anyway. So anybody that wants to connect with Julie or have a chat with you, I'm sure that she'll be more than happy to do so. So Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for having me, Tom. Brilliant to chat to you as ever. Awesome. And guys, don't forget to check out who's on next week's episode now.